Hi, I'm Amy Edwards, and welcome to the Edwards Table. This podcast is all about real conversations, the kind that come from life, love, family, friendship, and all the messy, beautiful parts in between. I started this show because I believe in redemption stories and in sitting down together to talk about the things that shape us, heal us, and sometimes just make us laugh. So grab a seat, take a breath, and join me, because there's always room for you here at the Edwards Table. Well, hey everyone, and welcome back to the Edwards Table. My name is Amy Edwards, and I am the host of this podcast. If you have never joined us before, we're so glad you're here, and if you've been along for a part or the whole journey, golly, I'm glad to have you. So today, typically you would notice I would have someone seated over here to my side, but today there is not a guest. And unfortunately, who should have been here, my husband John, was going to come back for another round of kind of chatting through our story. And unfortunately, for those of you who don't know him, he does a lot of woodworking for our business that we own. And he got tangled up in some cords while he was in the shop working and took a tumble, and thankfully made it out with just maybe a separated rib or a really badly bruised rib is kind of what we kind of figured. But sitting still for too long of a period, not a great thing for him. And also coughing and things like that hurt. So all this to say, we decided this week would not be a great week for him to record. And so he sends his very best and assures me that he will come and join me again for next week's session of chatting through and all of that good fun stuff for our next episode. But in the meantime, I did not want a week to go by and take this opportunity to be able to just share some thoughts with you all and kind of thinking about this time of the year. I know that we've just entered the month of December this week, and the holidays and all of that good fun. And I know if you tuned in last time, you heard us kind of talking through when we lost everything and the inability to, give our kids Christmas and how important the holidays were for me as a young mom. I've always wanted holidays to be super special. And for the first time, we couldn't buy gifts. We couldn't buy a Christmas tree. Back in Tennessee, we always had a live one. It was a whole thing. We would go and cut it down and, did the tractor ride and all of the things and brought it home, and the kids would help me decorate and whatnot. And so for the first time, unable to do that. And as I was kind of thinking about today and sitting down with you all, I was thinking, I would love to share with you kind of how those kinds of moments, like going through really hard times, how I got through them. Because obviously we are, golly, I don't do math, so a lot of years ahead of where we were when we lost everything. And to say that it was a difficult time would be a very big understatement. It was so difficult. It was so hard. Emotionally, it was exhausting. Physically, it was draining. Spiritually, it was wrecking me and refining me, though, right? So definitely became a much more grounded human after doing all of those things and going through being humbled so big. But I wanted to share kind of some of the ways that I dealt with that, because I don't know for you all, but the holidays aren't always easy, right? Like, I know we just celebrated Thanksgiving and we're getting ready to jump, cannonball in the deep end of the big holidays of Christmas and New Year's and all that brings, right? Whether you celebrate or not, definitely a new year is going to come. And sometimes that's really encouraging, and then other times that's really debilitating. And so I thought, you know what? As I was kind of mulling around, I thought, golly, I think I'll share kind of what I have tried and what has been beneficial and helpful for me over the course of years that I've been on this earth. And so first and foremost, if you've listened in at all, you know that my faith is a big part of my story. And so I would be remiss if I didn't start there in telling you that I lean very firmly into my faith. during difficult times, I find that's when we cry out to God the loudest and the quickest. It's not usually during the big celebrations that people are, really going to the Lord on a regular basis. Because it's really easy in the good times to think, oh yeah, I got this, I got this. But in the difficult times, a lot easier. God, where are you? God, why is this happening? God, help me. God, please. And so for me during that time, it was definitely more of a transactional relationship in the sense of I would cry out to him. I would cry without words, it didn't matter, but I definitely relied heavily on my faith. And so when I say that, there are a couple of different things that I did and do still to this day. One is that I read my Bible. And during those times when we were losing everything is kind of the time I'm going to refer to. But I've done this other times when I've gone through really hard things as well. And typically when I'm reading in the Bible, there will be a select passage or several verses, several passages that will really speak to me during that time. And what I mean by that is, for instance, when we were losing everything, verses that I would read daily would be in the book of Matthew, which if you're not familiar with the Bible, it's the very first book of the New Testament, and that's on the back end of the Bible. It's in chapter 6, and it's verses 24 to the end of the chapter. And it's when Jesus was out and about in his ministry. So he was roaming the earth, and he was telling what they call parables, which are stories that are relatable, right? Because the people he was talking to, not all were well educated, like maybe, the college grad kind of situation of today, and obviously didn't have access to a cell phone. So he would speak in parables, these shorter stories that were very relatable. And in that, he was talking about worry. And obviously very appropriate for the time. I was worrying constantly that someone was going to knock on our door and serve us yet another lawsuit, or someone was going to come and cut off our utilities, or we weren't going to have enough money to get Quinn's medications because he was asthmatic and had horrible allergies. We had to spend a lot of money every month on that. Or we weren't going to have enough food, or whatever, right? Like all the things that were going through my mind at this time. So I would lean really heavily into reading the Word. So it says in the Bible that it's living and breathing, and it truly is for every single person. And it means different things at different times. I read that now, and it's not the same as then. Then it just spoke to me about do not worry. Doesn't tomorrow have enough worry for itself? I mean, Jesus being, I think, a little bit cheeky when he was talking, right, of with a smile on his face and saying, look, you can't change it. Like, you can sit here and worry about it all day long, but it will not change what's going to happen tomorrow. And so those verses, huge for me. Second thing about my faith is prayer. And that sounds kind of weird if you're not into that kind of a thing, if you will. But let me talk to you about what prayer truly is. It's having a conversation. It literally is like what I'm doing with you right now, except you can't talk back to me, which I'm sad. I wish you could. I wish you were sitting right here next to me and we were chatting. But that's the beautiful thing about having a relationship with God, is that you can freely talk to him. And the beautiful thing is that because he's been here on this earth and he experienced his best friend dying, he experienced his own crucifixion and death. I mean, going through just horrific things prior to dying, and having, a mom and a dad and brothers, potential sisters, like all kinds of family members, the dynamics that go with that, the emotions that go with things. We hear in certain stories, like he went to wedding celebrations and he went and ate with a wide variety of people, many of whom the folks of their day would really look down at their noses for him doing it for. And so he's experienced all of these feelings. And I say all of that to say this: he can handle it. Whatever it is that you're going to tell him, albeit if you're angry, if you're hurting, if you're lost, if you're hopeless, if you are helpless, if you feel overwhelmed, and you need to yell and you need to let it out, and you're screaming, yelling, cussing because you're pissed. Okay, he can handle it. You feel really undeserving. You feel tons of shame. You feel that you are unworthy. Okay, he can handle it. Anything that you can bring to him, either he's experienced or witnessed in the physical form, so he knows. And you're not going to tell him anything. You're certainly not going to say anything he's not ever heard, right? And so those two things in terms of my spiritual life, reading the Bible and praying, those were huge for me during those times. And then the third part of that, if you will, my spiritual life is, and was always, continues to be, is community. So I know that John and I have talked about this together, and then also I think I shared a little bit with Maddie in season 1 when I was telling my side of, kind of my side of the story, if you will, and just talking about how vital community is, and not just community, but a healthy community. And what I mean by that is when we were going through our difficult times, we had people who loved us. And love does not necessarily mean handing things to us hand over fist, right? So people who loved us and cared about us made sure that we weren't going without, but also weren't, giving us fistfuls of money and dinging us out of our situation. And so being loved well, having people speaking into us, talking to us, encouraging us, checking in, making sure that we were okay, those kinds of things, our community came around us that way. And so our tendency as humans is to withdraw. I know I jokingly will tell people I'm kind of like a turtle. I will go out into the world and do my thing, but then very quickly when I feel overwhelmed or stressed or anything, I withdraw. Like I pull myself back into that shell. And heaven help if I've been hurt. It's an act of Congress and God all together trying to pull me out of that at the same time. And so I totally get the not wanting to do the community. I'm the first person to complain to John about I really don't feel like peopling or whatever else. I'm an introvert. Like, I don't know if that's surprising or confirming, but I am. I am an introvert. So I really recharge my social battery curled up on the couch with a nice blanket and a very quiet space for a couple of hours. That makes me very joy-filled. Not always reality, but that is definitely something I try to make time for on a regular basis, is recharging. And for me as an introvert, that means not peopling. Also, it means depending on the people I'm peopling with, right? So anyway, community, Bible, prayer. 3 big pieces of how I got through that. Another aspect that I wanted to talk to you about and kind of talk through was just my mindset during that time. So you think back to the fact that I was in my 20s. I was the mom of 2 kids. We were living in a gigantic house, driving really nice cars, and very quickly lost all of that. So cars repossessed, had to short sell pretty much our house. Sold off any and all material things we had, so furniture, toys, clothing, whatever we could get money for, and had to figure our way out of the 08-09 economy crash. And where we were in Tennessee, the market there just didn't replenish quickly. It took many years for it to come back to life. And, being able to wake up every day and to have a healthy mindset was vital to my existence. I can say that for a fact. I think as a woman and as a mom, I use that part of my brain, I guess it is, but where you can kind of compartmentalize to shut off and turn off something in your life and just focus on something else. So I've always said this, I'm an excellent compartmentalizer. I like to take all my trauma and put it into beautiful Tiffany boxes, because I'm sorry, there is nothing more beautiful than Tiffany blue and a white satin ribbon. However, going through the losing of all the things and the trying to make it day to day, right? Because you do have to survive it in order to eventually thrive again. And so my mindset was imperative. And focusing on being positive. And that was something actually instilled in me from a very young age from my mom. She was very adamant about being a positive human being. And if you look into the science behind it, it actually is physiological. It's not just, people with smoke and mirrors trying to throw you a line, but it literally does change us physically in our bodies. It pumps the good stuff that we want pumping through us to kind of give us that endorphin and that dopamine and that all those good things that keep us up and moving forward. And so for me, state of mind was vital. And it was simple things. It wasn't me, reading 6 books and taking notes and all of the things. And don't hear me knock that. There are some great books out there by some very talented human beings, but you don't have to do that. Like, I financially was not in a place where I could go buy another book. And so it was just simple things. Waking up in the morning and saying, today is going to be a great day. It's a great day to have a great day. People hear me say that all the time and kind of giggle when I say it. But typically when I do say it, it's when I'm feeling kind of grumpy or just kind of funky starting off in my day. It is a great day to have a great day. And I think we can all do that, right? No matter what our circumstance, no matter how bad it really is in reality, if our focus is on all of the bad stuff, it is going to be a bad day. Guaranteed. If you're going to focus on failure, you will indeed fail. If you're going to focus on success, you will indeed succeed. And so mindset for me was huge. It also bled over into my relationship with John. So as you all can probably imagine, the way he was feeling during that time and the amount of depression that he would fight every day. And so we just kind of had this rhythm in the morning where, he might be struggling to get up and put his best foot forward. And, there were days where I'd go dig change out of the couch cushions and out of the truck door or console, and like go find change and put together $2. Because I think back then you could go to Starbucks for about $2. And just to get him to get up and go out of the house, to go find another human being to make contact with. John, unlike me, very extroverted. And so for him to get out of the house was vital. So like we had this rhythm of pushing one another as needed and encouraging one another, but always keeping that positive, mindset and just the way that we talked about things. Like we are going to, attempt to reach out to a customer, to possibly get a renovation job, to find another person that we can do work for. It's just that constant positivity. So we've talked about my faith, we've talked about mindset. And I think too, with my mindset, not just the positive in the moment, but also the positive of the outcome. So in my mind, I knew that we would get through this. I knew that there would be another day, if you will. And that, I believe, is something that God gives us in our spirit. Like He will give us a little encouragement of, I'm not done yet. We're going to get through this. And so having that set in front of me and knowing, I didn't know the timeline. I had no idea how long it was going to take us. But I knew that there was light at the end of that tunnel, and that there would be a rainbow at the end of that storm. Like all of the arrows, if you will, were pointing in that direction. And so I clung to that hope, that knowing that in the moment it felt hopeless, it felt helpless, it felt impossible, it felt like all the things that could be bad or wrong or good grief fall apart. They were, and they did, and that was true. But that there was hope at the end. And part of what helped me part of what helped me maintain that mindset was a spirit of thankfulness. So I don't know about y'all, but when I get into a funk, and I tend to struggle with that a whole lot in my 50s. So for all you younglings out there, Sad news as women, this whole perimenopause business, it's all real. I'm not going to lie to you. And you kind of start going through this again where you struggle with your moods of like being positive or negative or feeling, like you're in a good mood or kind of a funky mood or I don't know. So it's kind of like being a preteen all over again. Welcome. It's so fun. But now you have the vocabulary for it, if you will. You've lived through it already once. And anyway, so in terms of that, oh, look at perimenopause and fuzzy brain. Here we are. But in terms of like that spirit of thankfulness and gratitude, really and truly helped motivate me. Sometimes it was minute to minute. Like, it might be, I was thinking about this particular instance. So before we moved out of our house back then, and we were within weeks of moving. So like the house had sold, it was December, we were having to move out on Christmas Eve. And our driveway, it was a hill down into the garage. And so I would stand at the bottom of the hill at the foot of the garage and look out, and it faced west, which is where the sun sets. Golly, I hope I got that right. Yes, rises in the east and sets in the west. So I would go outside, and that's where I would go when I was upset. And when I say upset, was crying, because I don't usually cry in front of folks. And especially my kids during that time. I tried not to do it as much as possible. They saw me cry. Don't hear me say they didn't see me cry, but there were times where I just needed kind of to release a little of that steam, if you will. And so I would go and I would stand at the bottom of my driveway and vividly can remember. So it was a 3-car garage, and off to one side was a small flower bed. And over the course of time of living there, we had planted a little dwarf Japanese maple. And if you're not familiar, Google it. They're gorgeous. And then some flowers and things like that. And that's where I go if I'm going to be outside. I love to tinker in the flower beds. And so it was beautiful. There was ground cover. There was like a potato vine, and there was some, I think, some impatiens in there at the time, and I don't know, some other really pretty annual flowers that would pop up year to year. And it was kind of a little respite space, if you will. And so I would stand beside that, but then I would look out up at the top of the driveway into the sky. And every time that I would go out there, it was like God had taken that sky and had painted it just for me. So it would be these deep, dark pinks and blues and purples as the sun would set, as is kind of the way fall does, right? The fall, as you're going toward that winter solstice, it illuminates the sky, the sun sets too, and then the colors are so deep and vibrant. And I just remember it was so breathtaking. And in those moments, when I would feel my lowest, that would be one of those things that I would say out loud to myself, I am so thankful to be able to stand here and breathe the fresh air and see such a gorgeous sky. Now, did that change the outcome of my situation? Absolutely not. It wasn't making food, it wasn't bringing in money, it wasn't doing any of that. But what it did was it got my mind to shift from frantic hopelessness back over to being thankful for what I did have. So not focusing on what I don't have, but let's look at what we do have. And to be able to enjoy that through a tear-stained face was a gift nonetheless. Other things, I would go into the pantry and we would have very limited supplies. And I got ridiculously creative with what I could cook out of what felt like nothing. There were very few things I had to have in order to make a meal. And I got really creative, not because I'm this wildly talented and gifted human that way, but because I had to. It was out of necessity. I had to. But then it turned into almost a thankful game, right? Of like, wow, I'm so thankful I have 3 ingredients and I can feed a family of 4 on that. And And hey, stick around. Y'all follow me on social media and I'll show you how I do it. But I digress. But just finding those moments where, as hopeless and as helpless, like I said, as it felt, I could easily and quickly look to something simple, or even something big. Like one thing that I would just constantly be thankful for when I would say things out loud was Quinn's health. So I said he had asthma and really bad allergies, and he had started off his poor little life just with ear infections and battled illness off and on a lot when he was young. And it wasn't uncommon for us to go to the ER when he would have asthma attacks, but for some reason during this season, we never did. And we never went without his medicine. And to this day, I don't know that I could tell you how we did it. It was just the way the money came in and had to go out. And at the time when we were able to pay for it. And it was insane. You know, another, for instance, speaking of his medicine, like we didn't have health insurance at the time because I wasn't working. I was staying at home with the kids and homeschooling, and we were self-employed, so we didn't have insurance. And yet we still were able to afford his prescriptions. And I mean, it wound up being hundreds of dollars a month. It wasn't cheap what we did have to pay for. And then one of the drugs he was taking was several $100s. So it worked out to almost like, I want to say $20 a pill, maybe even more. It was ridiculous. But for whatever reason, that month, I don't know if it had been on the market long enough, or there was something that shifted, and then the cost just plummeted, and it was like $40 for a whole month's worth. You know, those kinds of things. And so when I would think back, you know, in the moment of feeling maybe I was having a pity party, really and truly. I was feeling sorry for myself and getting really whiny. I'm excellent at that as well when I'm feeling overwhelmed. And very quickly, when I would shift my gaze to what I did have, those were the kinds of things that would pop into my head, and I would be like, golly, I mean, like, it doesn't even make logical sense. When we couldn't hardly pay the light bill, how in the world we could pay for all of Quinn's medicines, and the fact that he stayed so healthy during that time. That was unheard of in the winter for him. Never should he have not gone to the hospital in the winter months, ever, but he didn't. So when I think through, like, whatever you're going through maybe right now, and maybe you're in a really great season. Please don't hear me say you have to have traumatic events going on in your life. But maybe you're going through a really rough time right now, and maybe it feels really hopeless and really overwhelming, and, you know, albeit loss, you know, grief, shame, you know, trying to overcome maybe a circumstance. Maybe you struggle with addiction. I know the list can go on forever. Like, there's so much out there, and there are so many of us out there who are dealing with things. And me personally, I mean, this past week, you know, we've had life hit us. It felt like, you know, I was going through a punching bag machine and being tested of being hit in every area of my body. And I mean, you know, John falling being one of those things. It's very sobering at the moment, right? Like, he's who we rely on in our business. He and I own a company together, and we do remodel work and home additions and build houses and all the good things. And without his hands and without his mind, our company would cease to exist. That's reality. And so it's very sobering when he fell. I had the pleasure of being very close to the garage door. I was doing laundry, and I heard it, and I heard him, and it was a different kind of a yell. You know what I'm talking about? You've heard those kinds of yells where it's like, you know, it's something serious. And ran out there to him flat on the concrete, face up, and his head was really close. So we have this like a 2-inch step up space on two sides of our garage, and it comes to a corner at our back door. And so like he was laying right there and his head was just right in the corner. And thankfully he did not hit his head. But what flashed through my mind very quickly was, of course, concern. Was he okay? Was he going to be okay? And then moments later, once he got up and kind of we assessed how he was. Do we need to go to the doctor? Kind of a thing. And just the letdown of that and reality of he could have hit his head. He could have, gotten a bad gash or, who knows? There could have been a ton of things that could have happened that didn't. But in the moment, it's very sobering. And so being hit with that, and then we have other stuff in life, always life, right? And it got me on this path of unhealthy thinking, of, questioning, like, why am I doing this podcast? Why are we trying to get this company that he and I started, up and running, which we're coming in on our first year. So, not that we've been doing it 10 years. This is our first year that we're finishing. And it's so funny, and well, in an ironic, not a ha-ha funny, but like ironic kind of funny. It's so funny how when we start talking together, and like typically I'm the one who is the cheerleader, the pep squad, woohoo, we can do this, whatever. And John typically is the one who is the naysayer. He's much more about like, I wouldn't say he's more of a realist than me, but he's definitely more apt to going to the negative side than I am initially. It's kind of shifted a little bit this year where he's more the positive Pete and I'm more the negative Nellie, if you will. And so he and I were talking after he fell, and we were like very thankful, obviously, that he was in a ton of pain, like I said, and is getting much better. He's healing really well. But that, again, then that means work slowed down a little bit for him. And so he's been having to work like at night and get up early in the morning and whatnot. But just thinking about that and how thankful we are, and it shifted both of us to gratitude really quickly, because it was like, oh my gosh, it could have been way worse than what it was, and we are so glad that it's not. So yeah, I felt like today was a good day as we're coming into this holiday season, and I know we've all survived Thanksgiving, if you're listening. And for some of us, it was a beautiful time. For some of us, it was a stressful time. For some of us, it was a depressing time. I get it. I think I've probably been in that spirit, each of those spirits that I've mentioned, for a holiday or two at least. And some of us had it was a phenomenal Thanksgiving holiday. But I know holidays are hard. I know that, folks make really poor decisions during the holidays. We tend to get in our heads, even though there's a lot of activity. We're very busy, but we're not very thoughtful in our own lives because we stay busy and going and doing, but we're not really stepping back to really think about what's going on and that kind of a thing. And so rash decisions are made, all the wrong words are spoken, and all of that good fun. And so I just think about this time of the year and just wanted to encourage you all, and really myself. I mean, this is kind of my pep talk of remembering that no matter the circumstance that we're in, it's not forever. Even though it may be a really long time. I mean, it could be weeks, months, years, decades for some things. But there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. We just don't know how long the tunnel is. And I think that if you struggle with whether or not you have faith, I can assure you of this, that for me personally, and I know if John were sitting here, he would say the same thing, that's what changes everything for both of us. Because even though we believe in God and we have a relationship with Jesus and all the things like that, it doesn't, like, we're not perfect people. We don't have easy lives. Life still happens to us just like it does everybody else. And I think sometimes, in today's time, people get maybe deceived by that. You think, oh, well, if you're a Christian, then your life is just bliss. No, actually, no, that is not even close to fair in terms of an assessment. It'd be furthest from the truth. We still have all of the things that happen because life happens. Life is life. But the beautiful part is that we're not alone on the journey. And God gives us more than we can ever handle without Him. But with Him, there's nothing that's impossible. And so I think that's the cool part of what's mysterious about God and what's so beautiful about what He does for us. And yeah, it's a really cool relationship. I'll land here for today. I was thinking about this. I wrestle with this a lot. Like, I go back and forth in my head a lot about this. There are people out there who will say, that as a Christian, fairy tales are not for real or whatever. And I am a fairy tale believer, and I'll tell you the reason why. If you really go back and look at fairy tales, right? Like, go back and look at, let's just say, Cinderella, okay? Let's just pick on her for today. So if you went back and you really look at the story of what she went through, the loss of a loved one, her dad who had remarried. Well, first she lost her mom, and then her dad remarries, and then she loses her dad. So she's lost both parents, has a wicked stepmother who pretty much treats her as a servant, and not even that, if you will. And she goes through some really horrible things, and yet the beauty of her story is she doesn't forget who she is, and she finds somebody to share her life with. Now, are you going to marry a prince and become a princess? I don't know. John would probably say I am a princess. He actually says I'm the queen of the house, so I am royalty here. But in terms of the way I look at my belief and how that lays down next to something like a Cinderella story, is that life here on this earth, it's hard. And some days are really great days, and some days are really hard days, and some days are just mediocre days. Lots of mediocre days, right? But the gorgeous gift that comes at the end of the life here on this planet is one of eternity. And so to me, that is almost like a fairy tale, in that, yes, you have to go out and fight the bad guys, if you will, do hard things and whatever else in this life, but the beautiful gift of eternal life with God one day, golly, that's kind of like finding your Prince Charming. I'm not going to lie. So me personally, I'm going to land there. That is how I look at what my relationship with God looks like. He's here to help me through all of the hard things. He's here to celebrate with me in all of the good things. And He's aligned my path here on this planet. The journey that I call life is wrought with some of the most gorgeous human beings you'd ever want to meet. Some of the nastiest human beings you ever want to meet, all to refine me, help me grow and stretch into the woman that I need to be. And it's something I'm super thankful for. And so no matter what your holiday season looks like this year, y'all, my hope for each of you is this, is that by coming and joining us here at this table, that there's always a seat for you here, that you're never alone in your journey, no matter how hard it seems. And whether you believe in God or not, He's everywhere. On the really good days, celebrate well. And on the really hard days, just don't quit. Keep moving forward. That was our mantra when the kids were homeschooling with me that year. Keep moving forward. Just don't quit. It's one step at a time. So I hope a little bit of what I shared today was helpful. Hopefully a lot of it was. And in the meantime, I hope you'll come back and join us again. Next time around, I promise the big gal will be back over here. We got some more to talk through before we welcome other folks here at the table. But we thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming and joining us here at the Edwards table, where there is always a seat for you here. Have a great day, y'all. See ya.